Hi everyone, I'm Akos. I'm the CEO of Airtime. I just love this music. I have to say that. So, welcome everyone. As I said, I'm Akos. Airtime. A couple of words about Airtime. It's an autonomous discovery platform turning user calls into product insights. You can run user research calls, sales, or customer service calls through it, and it will identify for you dominant feedback patterns like unmet needs or pain points. Now, today I'll be talking to Anna-Zsofia Csontos about how to build a user research practice from scratch. She's a UX researcher at UX Studio, and she had the opportunity to build research practices from scratch in all kinds of environments and companies. And this is what we're going to dig into today. Let's shift to the main event. And Anna, it's Anna-Zsofia. It's a pleasure to have you here. I'm really excited to learn about your experiences building research practices. And I think the best way to get started would be to tell a few things about yourself, please.
First of all, hi everyone, and thanks for joining. I'm pretty excited to be here. I see people are tuning in from different continents, which is pretty exciting for me. Thank you for the introduction. That's right, I am a UX researcher at UX Studio. I joined the company in 2018. I've been a researcher since 2017. I come from a background of psychology, and during my years as a researcher, my experience was that 100% of the time I was the first researcher at companies who I collaborated with, and that was an exciting experience because it spanned from different industries like cybersecurity to hospitality or fintech, and every experience was widely different. So I have experience from startups and from bigger multinational companies, and during the way I discovered that besides actually planning and conducting research and communicating research insights, I have a passion for making the research processes better, communicating with stakeholders, and a little bit of like research operations, research management.
Amazing. Now let's just jump into deep water straight away, because I think there are so many layers of the topic that I'm already worried right now that 30 minutes won't be enough to like peel this onion of building research practices. So what I'd be interested in is that you said you worked for corporates, you worked for startups, and you sort of came up with a blueprint, right? How to set up the research practice in various types of companies. And I'd like to ask you to please walk me through either, like, let's pick a recent project and walk me through like what happens is when a client comes to you and say, Anna-Zsofia, we want to know more about our customers, but we don't have any user researchers on board. We don't know how to get started. Like, there's no processes, no tools, nothing. There's just the realization that we need to do that. So you have to start from like a blank sheet of paper. What do you do?
Yeah, great question. So first of all, I put my researcher hat on. So this is no different from any other situation where I have to get to know how the organization works at the moment where I'm joining. So they must make decisions somehow. They currently have many times have a working product or a concept or software as a service, and they have developers, or they have plans for developing features, and they make those decisions somehow. And first of all, I'm trying to map out the stakeholders that are involved in the process and the information that goes into these product decisions. So one answer might be, yeah, like 2 years ago, we did some market research with an agency, and this is what we based our feature list on, and since then we haven't updated it. Or for example, we have support calls, and we base our decisions on feedback, like feature requests and problems that come through customer calls. So I'm trying to dig for things that they already have. Many times they have analytics. Many times they have support calls, customer calls. They have data from the marketing department, maybe even some market research personas, maybe even designers run some usability sessions. So first of all, I'm trying to get to know how they work right now and what are the things like data that I can leverage to get started, and someone hasn't leveraged yet. On the top of that, there are some like so-called low-hanging fruits that you can start with. For example, have you looked into competitors recently? The market is like very quickly changing. So that's doing some desk research, secondary research, reviewing literature. Those things are basically free, available for you. Also, setting up a few calls with the potential or current users and customers. And with a researcher, you can do this with the right methodology and right experience. And what is crucial is that you invite those stakeholders who haven't connected with, haven't heard from these users yet. So present this realization or wow moment very quickly after I onboard. And yeah, basically after that, you get some credibility with delivering on things fast and getting to know the processes. And then I try to also map out what is the biggest barrier for research to have a wider reach right now. Is it that you can get to participants? Is it that you don't have the right resources or tools? Is it that there's a lot of tech debt and developers are, I don't know, busy on something else, or you have a huge churn and that's the business problem that you have to solve? So yeah.
It's before we move on to further steps in this process, I want to go back to this because I think it's an essential part when you talk to stakeholders. And correct me if I'm wrong, but to my understanding would be that as you map various feedback sources, what is things that are already available, it's like sort of a natural consequence that those are your counterparts and stakeholders that you're talking to. So if it's analytics, you're probably going to talk to someone from either BI or a product manager. If it's customer service tickets, then you're going to be talking to customer service. Now, in this process, how do you plot these? Do you send an email asking, hey, what are the feedback sources? Can you guys help me? Do you organize like one-on-one interviews? How exactly do you get to the point where you can say, okay, I talked to all relevant stakeholders, and now I know all the feedback sources?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's a good question. I think it's really good if you can have some face-to-face time, even if it's remotely one-on-one, so that they get to know your thinking and processes. Because many times when we come in as first researchers, stakeholders haven't heard about user-centered design or haven't adopted this customer-centric thinking. So and showing is a good companion to that. So I try to come to them on a one-on-one session with something that might be valuable for them already, that I can reach from the data sources I have available, or sharing something from my initial sessions. There, I think there's always some learning for sales or for marketing that I can already deliver. And also at the same time, I ask for their biggest problem or concern regarding customers or their biggest questions or gaps relating customer behavior, and I try to follow up with them and get answers to those questions, and that helps me building a good relationship. And as you mentioned, yes, it's different departments: marketing, sales, customer success. And as I mentioned, I've worked with smaller companies, startups, or scale-ups where I actually had direct contact with the CEO, which is really valuable, and I try to make good use of that.
Okay, okay, got that. So let's go back to your process. You mapped out your stakeholders and the various sources. You take the low-hanging fruit to show everyone the value that user research can deliver to various departments. And then in the next step, you look at what are the key barriers to take this current like setup and data sources to the next level, right?
Mm-hmm.
What happens afterwards? And I think it would be if there's a recent project that we can use or a product that you worked on in the past, it helps to make it like less hypothetical and more concrete. I don't know if you have something that you're allowed and that you can we can take. It can be like a made up name. It doesn't have to be the exact brand, but I think using that a concrete example would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, for example, I worked with a fintech company. They already had a developer team. They were also externals, but we were the first UX, or not the first, but for a redesign project, a complete rehaul for a website and the application. We came in from UX Studio with 2 designers and myself as a researcher. And during the process, it was quite a smaller team. So the closest relationships I had to forge were with the CTO, the CEO himself, and later on with the content / marketing team. And it quickly became clear that and there were like it quickly became clear that there was a need for a product manager who serves as a bridge like between the CEO's vision and then grabbing the data that we provide and also communicating with the CTO and actually what we're developing. And I communicated that early on, and it was also on this project and on another one that for the time being, why they didn't have a dedicated product manager, I assumed some of these responsibilities, like laying out a proposed roadmap based on all the data we had, doing workshops with stakeholders, so I know more about their business problems and their business goals for the next quarters. It certainly took some time away from research planning and conducting one-on-one research. But once a PM onboarded, then we worked really closely together for some time, and then the lines were separate and clear once again. And I could find an ally in him that was really important. He listened to our findings and insights. And for example, I told him that, okay, we don't have analytical data from the app currently, or like precise analytical data, and we need to solve for that somehow. And then after I built trust, it was a really seamless process, because he understood user research, he believed in user research, and he helped to get that tool through, give me the tool, and I could have access to analytical data and even define what to measure from then on.
I think that's a very interesting point. As you start building up your research practice, what are the must-haves in terms of data sources? And analytics seems like, okay, it needs to be there, but is there anything else that if you get started with the research practice, it's essential to have, otherwise you won't be able to deliver meaningful insights to the rest of the organization?
Yeah, from like my first thought, quality participants, like access, like really knowing who you are, who you want to learn from, like knowing precisely who your target audience is. Maybe you have different personas, maybe you have different segments. Once you have a clear, you can do some research to find that out if you don't know yet. And once you have that, that's the most crucial part, in my opinion. Like getting quality research insights depends on having access to those participants that really are in your target audience or potential target audience. Otherwise, it's not not quality data.
Okay, got that. Let's talk about this list setting up, and I like the fact that it's not like when you go to a company, it's a long process, and then in the end there's flow charts and everything, and this is now your research process. But we try to deliver value as early as possible, almost like time to value, like in a good product. It's also very short here. How would it is there an MVP version possible where you may not come up immediately with the ideal or perfect research practice, but something that starts to deliver value at a low effort, and then later on you expand? But is there an MVP version that of that research practice that you've come across in your projects?
Yeah, well, I would say I would investigate like what's the bottleneck of research not being able to move from an MVP to a more scaled up process. And on the long term, I would want to solve for that. But yeah, to make it more tangible, let's say resources. You don't have a budget for tools and different research tools, and you don't have a lot of budget for example, paying out incentives or recruitment fee. So in that case, because I still need the value and I still need the insight, I leverage, or I go to those tools that are accessible, or research methods. For example, I think desk research or this social listening is underrated. You can definitely go on the internet and do some digging, and even like organize those insights and do a proper analysis of what you hear people talking about certain products, problems, and so on. And those deliver value but are free and accessible, and you can set it up pretty fast. With, for example, access to quality participants. That's why, for example, I come from an agency, and we at UX Studio have that part covered because we know that's really essential for us to show value to the company. So we have our own panels that we can use so that we can get to users quickly. But if that's not the case, still we have our own ways to do our own recruitment by hand, which can save up some I don't know, from the budget, save some, and then you can concentrate on like really having participants with quality insights who are screened by hand by us and recruited by hand, and get those insights in front of the team. So yeah, I think you posted about it today, like when an insight is lost or something, if you don't put it on a slide. Well, not with the slide, but my example is the insight is really lost if you put it in a presentation, but it doesn't get to decision makers or the development team. So it relates to the MVP version. What I would say, you can do all the research in the world if it doesn't get to the next level, to those people who can make changes, like in business strategy, in the roadmap, or in the product relating usability to that. So what I would put my efforts into is building up how I communicate those insights that I get.
Mm-hmm. What's I think so. What I posted was exactly as you mentioned. I think I wrote that an insight which is not shared is an insight which doesn't exist, right? Because we look for insights in order to make an impact on the business and improve the user experience later on, that we to provide our customers. And you just like provided me like a perfect segue to focus on this latter part of a research practice. So we talked about aligning with stakeholders, identifying the sources, finding the barriers, like difficulties to recruit the right kind of profile. Now, once you and let's focus on like a qualitative interviews. Let's say you ran these interviews. with your, let's say, discovery calls. What's your format? Have you maybe experimented with various formats, how you share your learnings with your stakeholders, and what has the best chance of getting through?
Mhm. Yeah, it's a really great question. So I have been in a position where I don't know, like research repositories were and still are all the hype, and they were great. And just for the sake of me being an up-to-date and professional researcher, I really wanted to do research repository on one of my projects. And for example, that was a misdirected decision on my part. So yeah, I do experiment with different variations of how I communicate my insights, because what works in one team totally doesn't work in another. And research repositories, for example, they take a lot of time and effort, and it might be lost if your team dynamics, your team setup works differently. So yeah, somehow when I collaborate, research has a place in the organization, also in the daily work and also in a bigger sense. And for example, when that time when I created a research repository, and no one was taking a look at it except me spending like hours on it to put the insights in there. The final version that I was satisfied with the engagement were Slack messages, actually. Like everyone was on Slack, 100%, and sharing quick insights after user sessions with highlights, with emojis, with everything, and everyone was really happy to interact with it. And then it wasn't like, just like that. It translated to product decisions, but they read it and they reacted to it. So when we had an actual meeting, I could refer back to, as you read in my Slack message, that was a key quote or something like that. So if sometimes like repositories could be scary, presentations could be like less accessible if they are not there. So like opening it at another time. So on that project that worked well. But yeah, I use like visual boards like Miro, FigJam. I use presentations. I regardless of what the final output would be, I always have detailed notes and recordings on every session if I have to go back in detail. And yeah, stakeholders vary. Like there are some stakeholders who said on my interviews, and if they couldn't, they watched it back, like every single one. And there were those who only engaged with it when I presented it in a bi-weekly meeting.
Cool. So, I think user exposure is like a theme that I've been obsessed with in the last few years. So I love that you mentioned this one. And one of the things that or a main theme that I picked up from the answer is to not to be afraid of experimenting with various types of insight sharing. So you try out, let's say, an insight repository. It doesn't work. Well, then it may be Slack messages. It may be something else. I know they are not like perfect substitutes, but I think the key learning for me is to look at the engagement. To what extent are people engaging with the content, with the insights that you're sharing? And if it's low, look for something else and try to find where they mingle and where they consume information from.
Yeah. For example, Slack could be like a gateway or just an extra thing that you do besides building the repository. There's like no one size fits all. Because I put so much work into it at that time, I haven't abandoned the repository. I just knew that I have to do something else because this is lost, and I have to communicate it in another way. But of course, for being able to go back to earlier research insights and draw conclusions, it's great that I have the research repository. It's just better if others engage with it. But I agree completely.
Yeah, and you mentioning this like a particular example of a pitfall, like building a repository and not being used. Are there any other typical pitfalls that we should be aware of as we build a research practice from scratch? Something that we wouldn't anticipate or think of?
Mm-hmm. Well, one way that I could describe it is avoid being siloed. It's easy to be siloed. I felt I was really limited, for example, on one project to being part of a Scrum team, which is like, lots of Scrum ceremonies, taking part of that, doing the research. Besides that, and I felt like, okay, I have no time and capacity for being in the discovery space when we are like planning, like what people need, what are their current problems, what is the next strategic step. And I think a pitfall is that you are stuck in one of these places. Like there's this strategic research, discovery research, there's this mid research that we can identify, which is like maybe qualitative studies on a larger scale, and there are those like usability tests, unmoderated tests, which inform very granular decisions with the design. And I think as a researcher, if you're the only researcher like I was in most of the cases, you need to be in these spaces, maybe not the equal amount, but it's definitely not good if you're shut out of one of these spaces and get caught up in all the Scrum meetings and Jira and replying to tickets and so on.
Cool. I'm gonna have like a quick shout out to the audience who's been like really active, and I love all the comments there. I already see a first few questions. I have two questions left for Anna-Zsofia. So if you have anything that you would like to pick her mind on, a situation that you're in, something that you're curious about, feel free to put it in the chat. I'm gonna throw the balls at Anna-Zsofia very soon. So, having said that, the two last questions that I have after the pitfalls, what I'd be interested in is that I guess also in the audience there are people work in companies of various size. Some are 20 people, maybe startups, seed stage. Some are enterprises, and in some case, like research practices built in enterprise for the first time. Do you have any insights on how your process of building a research practice from scratch differs depending on the size of the company? Is there anything that is fundamentally different?
Yeah, I think the first that comes to my mind is the difference in pace. Let's take an enterprise. At first, changes will happen much slower, but also because of this space, that might give you more time for the operations side of research, carefully planning the study, and reporting it. But at the same time, it can be very different because I've been in enterprises where there was like shipping products like this, and every 2 weeks new features coming out, and then it was like a usability test factory. So this is not universal, but generally speaking, for example, wanting to purchase a knowledge management research repository tool at a huge company and introducing it and training people on how to use it and spreading insights on it, it's like a half a year long project. Whereas in the same thing in a small company could be like, I talk with a PM on Thursday, and on Monday, okay, I got the green light from the CEO or whoever, and we purchase this tool, this analytics tool, for example, what I mentioned earlier, and there you go. You can set up the key metrics and take a look at it and include it in your weekly report, or use it for any research questions. So one is the pace. The other is like the bigger the organization, the more complicated these relationships get, like who makes the decisions, who reports to who. So there's a little bit of politics involved. Also, who you talk to regarding research processes, how to make them better, the place of research in strategic decisions as well, not only the tactical research. And in these large companies, I think it's especially important to find your allies who will advocate for research and research's involvement as early as possible when starting something new, or even like concepting something new. And I also found that in larger enterprises, there is some key influential department. Could be sales, could be marketing, could be customer success, but there is someone who is like really like always bringing initiatives. People are really like listening to this person, and you want to be close to that person in that department, and have a good back and forth. Yeah, and in smaller companies, that's I think a big advantage, that there's a small team. You can have direct access to C-level people. I know what's happening. I know how decisions are made. I know I know about the roadmap. Whereas in bigger companies, it gets fuzzy, and I don't know about a lot of things that are happening. But in small companies, that could be the disadvantage as well, because if you're working with one person who is a long way off from seeing the value of research, and you always have to prove yourself, that could be difficult. I have experience like having turned people to my side, but it is a difficult road to take when there is, for example, no dedicated PM. And I've been in this situation where I have to work with a CTO or a CMO, for example, and they are my manager. And we come from really different backgrounds, and we have really different departments to look out for, and it's hard to find research's place and show its value at a small company.
Let me just put Jayapal, and I hope I pronounced the name correctly, a comment up here, and it's about the frustration in their companies and their approach, leadership. I think this is one of the classic conundrums and difficulties of user research. I'll let you read through in the meantime. Is that if you don't have buy-in from the leadership and the natural support for research, what should you do? Should you abandon ship, or is there a way to convince them?
Mm-hmm. I've been in that ship, definitely, and I understand the concern. Well, I couldn't tell you in this webinar to jump ship or not, but to address the concern with showing the value of user research, you mentioned prioritizing ideas. Well, we actually, for those ideas, we do the research, and like we mentioned earlier on, we show it to them directly, like video snippets, quotes on how they react to it. And it's not, it's not proving the leadership wrong or anything, but it's like purely not my opinion, not my idea. This is feedback from your customers who you are building the product for. So I would say that's my main weapon for showing the value of research and like getting closer to them. Or for example, there I think, for example, cancellation interviews, like interviews with people who, for example, cancel a product or a service. those could be a real eye opener for people, because you could say like, oh, well, they didn't like this feature, or it doesn't seem to be a need, but those were only 5 people, or there are these usual comebacks, but sometimes it's good to show the other side, like those who turned away from the product and why.
I think it's very powerful to hear insights from the mouths of your users. There's like a lot of the typical counter arguments. Oh, maybe just the researcher picked a certain, or not meant in a bad way, but it's just a certain set of people, and these are isolated anecdotes. That is, I think if you listen to like the first churn interviews, especially like many of them, and you see some recurring feedback that sort of like sticks in your mind. I have another question, which is about a different topic, and I wonder if you have some suggestions on that. If somebody is transferring and transitioning into a UX researcher role, what would be your recommendation in terms of courses or certifications that they should consider?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think if I can mention something outside of courses and certifications, is building relationships and maybe finding a mentor. I did have mentoring also at my first workplace, and also at UX Studio. I work with a lot of talented researchers, and we work in a mentor system. So I find it really helpful if you have a personal relationship with someone. I mean professional relationship, but communicating one-on-one on a regular basis. And courses and certifications, I'm not so up to date on this topic, because it's been a long time ago when I chose my path to UX research from psychology. But what we have in Hungary available, there are lots of courses, these boot camps that take place also in person. You can work in teams, you can work on a real project, for example, for a nonprofit organization, and that makes for a great case study. Or if you're already working at a tech company that has a research function, obviously the answer would be reach out to them, grab a coffee, look into if you can find their insights, their documents. You can get involved, I think, from different functions. I always like when people from different functions, like I mentioned, marketing or sales, reach out to me and have a discussion. And usually it's very eye-opening for the both of us. I don't know if it helps. I'm not so up to date on online courses, but I think these in-person either boot camps or finding a mentor is really helpful, and much more helpful than an online self-paced course.
I'd like to second your point about finding a mentor. I had the honor and the pleasure of talking to Marty Kagan a few months ago, and he used to be a developer at in the early days of his career, and he transferred in a product manager role. And what he emphasized very strongly is that this transfer was possible because he had a mentor. One of the product executives who was helping him fit into that new role. There's a lot you can learn from that person. Moving on to Rachel. This is not a question. She left it as a comment in the discussion. But since I saw ChatGPT and Research Repository, I thought to pick your mind on building on Rachel's comment here. What your experience is with ChatGPT and user research.
Well, in itself, I don't have a very, very positive experience with ChatGPT. I tried it a couple of times, but maybe it's me. But it misses a lot of things, and I like to watch back the sessions and look for the nonverbal cues. Look for, especially with usability testing sessions, but even interviews. Nonverbal cues are really important, and for example, highlighting the important points, it helps me a great deal if I go through it again and then I already know what the key insights are. It's more time consuming, but ChatGPT missed a lot of it. And I read about prompting, I read about a lot of resources, but still it makes such mistakes. Like I'm like, okay, please grab quotes, and I tell it to grab quotes on this topic in this part of the interview, and it rephrases it, and I'm like, no, direct quote, please. Rephrases it completely or makes up a quote, and I don't know. I think it's just not at the level that I can trust it. But what I can say, I do like to experiment with like there are lots of repository tools popping up. I'm not gonna mention names right now, but I tried a few, and I try to regularly be up to date with them. And many of them have built-in AI functions, and when it's purposely built or like integrated into a repository tool, I can find it more useful and helpful for my work. But ChatGPT, not so much.
Question mark so far. I have an intriguing question from Idrin, and this is about a situation when doing research is part of your job, and you have many other things that that you need to take care of. How do you balance? How do you keep all the balls in the air?
Well, it's
Can you? Can you? Maybe you can't.
yeah. There are times when you have to scale back one of these areas or responsibilities. I think it's my work style and my personality. I can bear and I like juggling things and prioritizing and organizing. So I get easily, I get overwhelmed by monotony and not I'm not especially enjoying it. So I like this way of working. But aside from that, I would say with like this relationship building or the research operations side of things, I think it's helpful if you think about it. You will have to do it eventually at some point if you're researching. If no one will take care of it for you. So whether you like it or not, or whether if it's hard to switch, you have to find a little time during your work week. And if it's like if it's something that's not evident, for example, for your managers or from someone in the team, you can definitely show the value of it. Like if you dedicate some time, like we said, building out a knowledge management system or a research repository, and people are questioning it, you can definitely put it to use early on, get feedback on it, iterate on it, and show the value of it. And yeah, after I went through these things that I told you about, like mapping out the processes and using what I can and like talking to different departments, I felt I could build trust. And 9 times out of 10, when I asked for something after I already built those relationships and showed the value, they were happy to, for example, grant me the extra time or dedicated time to deal with participant management, building out a knowledge management system, or doing a little like education or training regarding UX research to designers or different functions. So I think it's a little bit of building trust and educating on research, and then you are able to ask to get some of your time dedicated to these tasks.
Cool, thank you. I have a question from Laura, which is tool specific. What is your experience? And she's mentioning 2 tools in particular, Maze and user testing. Do you have any thoughts on these, or just something that comes straight to the top of your mind in terms of design research?
Mm-hmm. Well, we have like some of the tools that we work with are coming from UX Studio, like the agency background, and some of the tools might come from the company we're collaborating with. I think what is essential after a while, at least, to have a panel from which you can recruit for your usability tests. And some panels have their built-in session replay where you can mark key moments, for example, or have a transcript ready, which, yeah, like someone else mentioned, helps to speed up your work. So something for participant recruitment, ideally for recording and analysis, like either research repository tool where you upload and can help you analyze and get the insights and the transcripts. Those would be essential. And what you mentioned about Maze, there is Maze and other tools like I have used Listna, for example. These have a lot of kinds of moderated tasks like click tasks, 5-second tasks, preference tasks, multivariate tasks, and so on, quick surveys. So for unmoderated testing, I think it's good if you have a go-to tool where you can pose these questions. And yeah, I've been doing that, for example, for copy testing. It's great if you have an unmoderated tool.
Cool. I have a last question from Yevgeny, and we're running out of time too. So if any of you have questions that we couldn't cover and you haven't put it down, bear with us. Connect with us on LinkedIn and feel free to pick our minds afterwards and get into the discussion. And now about Yevgeny's question, we're gonna get back on the AI theme, but now not so much focused on a research repository, but in general. Where do you see AI as a useful companion in user research, and what challenges do you see today and in the future?
Oh, that's a big topic. My colleagues did publish a roundup of AI user research tools besides repositories as well. And we have been experimenting, working with ChatGPT and other Gen AI tools, like in what ways can it help research. I can share my personal experience. I think it's great for content generation. Like if you struggle with, I don't know, I always write a research plan. It helps me, it keeps me accountable, helps me to be organized, and for example, for script writing, ideating on research questions, and so on, I do find ChatGPT helpful. Also, it helps. It has a vast knowledge, so it can review literature. There are tools dedicated for reviewing scientific literature. It's useful for running a quick search. For example, I've used Perplexity researching some topics. Because we're an agency, I have to pick up domain knowledge really fast if I start working with a company. And the challenge is that it's not human. Of course, I think it wouldn't replace, like, if you're a user researcher and you've been a bit in a session with a user and built rapport and really saw that person like opening up, and you could see like those nonverbal signs, and like when to ask the question, when to have that pause, and those are things that an AI wouldn't do, or not that way, or it's really far off from that. So for moderated sessions and interview techniques and rapport building, I think humans are and will be essential for a great while.
Amazing. Thanks so much. And let's just, this was the last question for the session today. We've seriously run out of time, but Anna-Zsofia, thanks so much for all the wisdom that you shared and your approach, your ups and downs in various settings. And huge thanks and love goes out to the audience, which has been amazingly active, very good questions, also detailed questions. And I wish we had like another hour just turning it into a round table, turning on all the cameras and chit-chatting. Maybe I'll do that one day. But for now, I want to wish everyone a very nice evening, afternoon, depending on where you're located. And Anna-Zsofia, I hope to stay in touch with you and when you had a couple of more interesting projects, I'd love to invite you back and hear more about what you learned.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Akos, and yeah, thank you for the questions and your active participation. And if I missed a question or we missed a question, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
Let's do that. Take care, everyone. All the best.